Leman Russ had called him a berserker in an angel's garb. And now the berserker was here. Now the Black Rage was here. This was the Sanguinius all his brothers feared. He was taken by the rage. Though Sanguinius stood tall, his nobility was gone. The mask that covered his savagery had fallen away. On his flagship, the Red Tear, Sanguinius spread his wings wide. He bared his fangs. The air around him crackled with psychic energy. The Lion and Guilliman were both too far away for aid, and it's doubtful even if they could have stopped him. The Primarch turned and lunged at his nearest son, the librarian Carno. The angel seized him by the gorget and lifted him high, then slammed him down hard through Cogitator Dex and a Servitor. But Sanguinius was not done with his son and pounced on the librarian. This time he lifted Carno by the chest plate and drew the blade Encarmine. Ascalon, commander of the Sanguinary Guard, interceded, grabbing his lord's arm. But Sanguinius lashed out and sent the Golden Warrior hurtling away. Carno was pleading for his life now, but his Genefather didn't care. The rage had him now. He went to deliver the killing blow, but the stroke never fell, for the blade was arrested by another's hand. With a face taut with fury, Sanguinius released the librarian and spun to face the one who had interrupted his kill. As he swung around, he was not prepared for what he would see, for now he stared into his own face. He stared at the Sanguinor. The Ruin Storm. A massive warp storm during the Horus Heresy blocked off large portions of the galaxy for many loyal to the Emperor. With the guiding light of the Astronomicon no longer visible, the Ultramarines and their Primarch Rebute Guilliman were cut off from the rest of the Imperium. This prevented the Avenging Sun from heading to Terra immediately, and fearing that the Emperor and Terra may even already have fallen, Guilliman made a dangerous decision, something that came perilously close to heresy itself. He planned for Imperium Secundus, a region of space founded around the Ultramarines' homeworld of Macragge and their 500 worlds. Under his command, the loyalist Iron Warriors warsmith Dantioch used ancient Necron technology, the Pharos device, to illuminate Macragge so that other servants of the Emperor could make their way through the storm. Guilliman was well aware of how his actions would be perceived here, therefore he knew he could not name himself Imperator Regis. However, Imperium Secundus would need an Emperor, and so he hoped the Pharos device might deliver to him a brother. It was Lionel Johnson of the Dark Angels who would arrive first. However, the relationship between the Lion and Guilliman was fraught with difficulty, for initially the Lion had indeed suspected his brother of heresy, and the secretive nature of the Lion and his sons made the Dark Angels questionable allies at best. Though the two legions would eventually learn to work together, thankfully the arrival of Sanguinius made things easier, for he was greatly loved by these two brothers, and so it was that Sanguinius was crowned Imperator Regis, a position he was uncomfortable with, yet he took out of necessity. The Emperor of Mankind had Malcador the Sigillite, the Council of Terra, and many others to act in his stead, for even a being as remarkable as he could not be everywhere at once. Likewise, Sanguinius realized that he needed someone to act in his place, a herald to make public appearances for him in case supplicants to the throne came with dark intentions. Ascalon, first commander of the Sanguinary Guard, the bodyguards of the Primarch, recognized this. However, he could not be both his father's herald and protector. Furthermore, the Primarch needed to be unaware of the herald's true identity, for the herald would become his voice in Imperium Secundus. What followed was a terrible request. This herald of Sanguinius, this Sanguinor, would be the angel's sacrificial son. Make no mistake, this son would have to die. Away from the rest of the Legion, Ascalon gathered the 10 greatest members of the Sanguinary Guard, exemplars of Baal's heritage all. First, each brother pulled a length of bound parchment from a bunch held by Ascalon. 2 were marked by a single blood drop. These were drawn by brothers Aratron and Hakael. By our father's body is the truth written. By his blood will it be remembered, and by our blood will it be honoured. Using a quill of purest white, pulled from his father's wing, Ascalon wrote in blood the names of both Aratron and Hakael onto their pieces of parchment. The commander then placed the parchment into a chalice before slicing his palm and squeezing a drop of his own blood into the cup. The 8 other members of the Sanguinary Guard who did not select the marked parchment all then did the same. When they were done, Ascalon set the blood inside a flame. The chalice burned with a blue flicker. Finally, Ascalon scooped up the ash and tasted it, swallowed it. It is done. May our Lord Sanguinius grant us the strength to endure. With this complete, the other 8 members all saluted and left the chamber. Ascalon stood before his 2 remaining brothers and offered each a length of kindling. The honour would go to the one to draw the shorter length. Hakael drew the longer piece of kindling, and so went and stood before Ascalon. He exposed his neck and demanded no pity or regret, for honour demanded this. Ascalon decapitated his brother with a single stroke, for it takes 2 deaths to keep a secret. Ascalon turned to face his final brother in the room, Aratron. For it was Aratron who drew blotted parchment and drew the shorter kindling. He would become the herald of Sanguinius, the Sanguinor, and yet no records of him would be kept by the Blood Angels henceforth. For Aratron, in many ways, would also now die. Like Hakael, his name was never to be remembered in the Hall of Heroes. His name, in fact, would be forgotten entirely by the Legion. From a nearby brazier, Ascalon removed a helm, burning hot from the fire. It was created by the Primarch's own hands and was a perfect replica of the one he wore. The blood grant you the strength to endure. Ascalon held his brother's head firmly and pressed the mask onto his face. The searing heat burns his flesh. Aratron screamed and then was gone. Only the Sanguinor remained, the herald of Sanguinius. He would represent the Emperor when Sanguinius was otherwise engaged. He stood even before the Lion and Guilliman, though the Lion especially would not take this well at first. It was the Lion who deduced from the ramblings and visions of Conrad Kurz that the Emperor did in fact live. The 3 brothers decided to make for Terra with their legions, and Kurz as a prisoner. This meant that Imperium Secundus was no longer needed, and Sanguinius no longer needed to hold the title of Emperor. Henceforth, the exact role of the Herald was uncertain, but he remained anonymous. Sanguinius felt a great sadness at the sacrifice his son had made for him. This was also not the first time. Earlier in the heresy, another son, Miros, had sacrificed himself and become the Red Angel. He embodied the Red Thirst, a curse within the Blood Angels that causes a yearning for destruction, a battle fury, and a hunger for blood. Whilst Aratron's deeds were certainly impressive enough to warrant his induction into the Sanguinary Guard, The Herald of Sanguinius appeared to have almost otherworldly abilities. The great angel himself noticed his herald's remarkable speed and ability to seemingly appear out of nowhere when needed. It was almost like, after the unique ceremony under Ascalon, something had truly changed under the mask. Though he was no longer Emperor, the Primarch of the Blood Angels knew somehow the Herald of Sanguinius would be incredibly important in his future. There was something in him that was so pure, the best of what the Blood Angels could be. Despite the Primarch's best attempts, they were still cut off from Terra and their father. Eventually, the Lion made a curious suggestion that the way to Terra is through Davin. Guilliman was unsure, but Sanguinius knew that this was the truth. For Davin is the planet where Horus Lupercal had fallen, where he turned from their father, and where he rose once more as the champion of chaos. Davin was where the Horus heresy began. The road was arduous. Everything was nearly ruined when a great shadow appeared before the Blood Angels' flagship, the Red Tear. It fired a single shot, straight and true, right into the chest of Sanguinius. Even though the event that caused it had not yet occurred, somehow Sanguinius suffered from the effects of the Black Rage and nearly killed his own son, the Librarian Kano. Only the intervention of the Herald cured him of his madness. But the angel learned the extent of the horror that awaited his sons. On Davin, Sanguinius, the Lion and Guilliman took Kurz and stood where Horus had fallen, the temple of the Serpent Lodge, the altar where Horus Lupercal lay and where his fate took shape. There, a portal opened and Sanguinius was swallowed. He saw visions of a future where he stood above Lorgar's body. He had impaled his brother through the chest with the spear of Telesto. Perturabo knelt before the angel, and Horus's rebellion was defeated. The Emperor would name him Imperator Regis for the entire Imperium. From there, Sanguinius would lead a great campaign to destroy the enemies of the Imperium. But Sanguinius realized the truth. These were lies. It was not the Emperor to whom he spoke, but a powerful demon. A demon that saw Horus Lupercal as but an imperfect vessel.
By paths of 8 and gods of 4, I am Madael the Undivided. By fates of 8 and edicts of 4, you shall serve. You shall be the Angel of Ruin.
The forces of chaos had set their many eyes on Sanguinius, just as they had Horus. But Sanguinius is a loyal son of the Emperor of Mankind. Angel and demon fought, and when Sanguinius made it back through the portal, he saw that his brothers and their sons were fighting against the hordes unleashed upon them by Madael. Nevertheless, the Lion and Guilliman were able to aid their brother against his great foe. Sanguinius and Madael were stuck between reality and the warp. The angel jammed spear and sword through the demon's chest, pinning it in place. Ascalon sought to pull his lord free, but Sanguinius sent him away. He requested that his sons and their allies withdraw, so they could obliterate Davin from orbit. Sanguinius would sacrifice himself here, for his brothers, for his sons, for the Emperor. The angel could feel the black rage slithering in the depths of his psyche, poised to spread its malevolent influence across the millennia. Whether he died here or on Horus's flagship, as he had foreseen, he could not spare his sons. However, it seems the destiny of Sanguinius was set, and he would not die on Davin. As the legions began to withdraw, Sanguinius looked and saw his herald kneeling before him. Once again, he had not perceived the legionaries' approach. However, he was here now, and he didn't need to utter a word. The herald raised his power sword and extended his hand towards his father, and the angel understood this gesture. The herald would take on this mighty burden. He would stand in place of his lord, as he was sworn to do. Sanguinius made to escape, to honor his sacrifice, and as he turned away from his son for the final time, he saw something curious, something mighty. Wings began to sprout from the shoulders of the legionary. He was transformed into a golden angel. With this sacrifice, the 3 legions would escape and destroy Davin, an act that would crack open the barrier of the Ruinstorm. The road to Terra was not entirely clear, however. Multiple blockades lay ahead of them, left by Horus, who may have somehow foreseen this turn of events. To overcome this next challenge, the 3 legions would have to split up. The moment of the Triumvirate's dissolution was finally upon them. The Lion would apply lessons he had learned during the heresy. The destruction of traitor homeworlds would draw forces away, as well as weaken those who draw their power from the warp. Guilliman would run interference on the blockades, tying them up and allowing Sanguinius to reach Terra. And every Blood Angel knows the story from there. The Angel would indeed reach Terra, where he would fight with the Defenders and fall against his brother Horus. But if the legends are to be believed, his blade wrought a chink in the War Master's armor, which the Emperor could then exploit to end the heresy once and for all. With Sanguinius' death, his great fear was realized. The Blood Angels will forever have the encoded memory of their Primarch's death ingrained within their gene seed. On the eve of battle, the memory of the Angels' fight against Horus may be triggered, and the Battle Brother's mind may be pulled back into the distant past. Some believe that they are Sanguinius upon the eve of his destruction, and whatever foe they are facing is in fact Horus. They will cry the same curses and howls of rage as their lord once did, 10,000 years earlier. Certainly, a warrior suffering from the Black Rage will appear half-mad with fury, and these damned souls will form the Death Company, where they will fight one final battle in Sanguinius' name. In the 42nd millennium, High Fleet Leviathan would invade Baal. However, relief would come from Rebute Guilliman, returned from a death-like state. Just as his arrival in the Sol System brought reinforcements to Terra, now he would bring Primaris reinforcements to the Blood Angels and their successor chapters. Guilliman would lament his brother's sacrifice and wonder if he could ever be as good a ruler as the noble angel. The Lord of the First has now also returned. The loss of the Angel, his most beloved brother, was one in a long line of catastrophes that ended with the destruction of his homeworld and his disappearance. You might presume that the proud Lion would be broken by these events, yet still he fights on, the Knight of Imperium Nihilus. As Sanguinius said himself, the loyalty of the Lion will never be in doubt. The paths of the Lion and the Avenging Sun are set to cross once again, the Emperor's last 2 loyal Primarchs. Their relationship was never easy, and the arrival of Sanguinius helped keep the peace during the heresy. Can the First and the 13th put their differences aside and work to serve their father's Imperium? If not, what kind of calamity may befall the Emperor's realm? As for the fate of the Sanguinor, he is the exemplar of the host, a legend reaching far beyond just the Blood Angels. In the millennia following the Horus heresy, the Sanguinor would appear upon the battlefield to fight alongside the Angels of the Blood in their times of greatest need. The Sanguinor appears so rarely and in such troubling times that few behold his glory and survive to speak of it, and many still believe he is merely legend or hallucination. Within the Blood Angels chapter's Reclusium is a single iron-clasped volume, where the accounts of the Sanguinor's manifestations across the millennia are recorded. There are many tales telling of tides of battle that were turned, and marines returning to Baal after suicide missions. For thousands of years, this golden angel of vengeance was the salvation of the Blood Angels and their successor chapters. Then one day, he meets Lewis of Baal Secundus, or as you may well know him, Commander Dante. A deep connection between the two has been present ever since. During the devastation of Baal, the Sanguinor came to fight for the sons of Sanguinius once again, and he appeared before Dante. But behind him stood a greater presence, Sanguinius himself. For when Dante looked into the face of the Sanguinor, it was no metal representation. This was a face of flesh. Dante begged his Gene Father for the freedom of death, but the Primarch told his son that with regret he cannot grant this. The commander's life, and therefore suffering, must continue. Dante is unsure whether he truly spoke to his father that day. However, it seems that part of Sanguinius' spirit now resides within the Golden Warrior. Of course, there are no records of Aratron that survive, and so the identity of the Sanguinor remains unknown to any in the chapter. Some within the Sanguinary Guard believe his true identity to be Ascalon, who still fights on by the Emperor's grace. However, we know that whilst Ascalon did contribute to the death of his brother, he is not in fact the Sanguinor himself. Knowledge and rumours of the Sanguinor have even reached the Inquisition. They worry that the Sanguinor is some form of psychic construct or even a potential threat. Some have even used this as further proof of the Blood Angels' corruption. Fools all. Amongst the Blood Angels chapter council, it has been argued often that he is the coalescence of the Primarch's nobler side, the part of Sanguinius that kept his legion's darkness in check, and was lost to the Blood Angels upon his death when the Black Rage was finally unleashed. And this we now know to not be too far from the truth. For when the Sanguinor disappeared through the portal on Davin, he became much more than even a transhuman being. After his sacrifice and the ritual conducted by Ascalon, over the millennia, into him was poured all the nobility of his brothers for 100 centuries. He reflects part of Sanguinius' bloodline, as all Blood Angels have a residue of their father's power. He came to embody Sanguinius' purity. Therefore, every time a Blood Angel creates a work of beauty or performs a noble act, it strengthens the Sanguinor. In M42, the Great Rift, the Cicatrix Maledictum, cuts the sons of Sanguinius off once again from the Astronomicon, the psychic manifestation of the Emperor's might, the guiding light in warp space. However, Mephiston, the chief librarian of the Blood Angels, is able to use the Sanguinor as a guide for the Blood Angels' fleet. But the Sanguinor is not the only reflection of the Blood Angels that exists in the warp. For even as he guided the Blood Angels' fleet, he was fighting a fierce battle with another warp entity, the Black Angel. Where the Golden Angel is the purity of the Blood Angels, the Black Angel is their flaw. This being has swelled to great power over the millennia, as the angelic bloodline has degenerated. The Black and Golden Angel do battle in the warp, and the Sanguinor is slowly losing. It is said that they have been at war forever, even before Sanguinius came to Baal. Those who dwelled on Baal in the distant past knew of the Angels of Black and Gold. Even Xenos were aware of them. This could be because the warp is not subject to time and space like our reality. so their battle could have essentially spanned for millions of years or even longer. Or maybe these two beings presupposed the arrival of Sanguinius, who was chosen as the host of these angelic deities on Baal. For most of history, it seems the Sanguinor could keep his foe in check, but with the opening of the Great Rift, he is now outmatched. The Black Angel is too mighty.
The Black Rage will one day destroy all those of the blood. It is inevitable. The question is, how those of the blood choose to spend their days before that happens, as paragons or as monsters.
Nevertheless, a partial, temporary, and incredibly dangerous solution has been found. Unlike the Sanguinor, the Black Angel was never mortal. He is the Rage, roaming free throughout the warp. Chief Librarian Mephiston was able to take the essence of the Rage into himself. He grounded in reality, became its prison. This was a terrible sacrifice, for he underwent a second rebirth as he became a Primaris Marine, and he is now the living manifestation of the chapter's darkness. Many within the Blood Angels fear and hate him. He is now consumed by this role and his soul is damned. But potentially, by this sacrifice, the Blood Angels will be saved for a time. Mephiston is a being with a threefold soul, whose power is quite unlike anything seen before. Commander Dante knows well the threat Mephiston represents to his chapter and the Imperium, and is willing to end his brother should it be necessary. Mephiston has also seen what he could become should he fail to control the power of the Black Angel. He resembled the Sanguinor, but where that warrior's armour was purest gold, this one's was blackest sable. Its helm mask was haughty and cruel. Blood ran freely from its hands and the mouth of the screaming visor. The warrior lifted a hand shaking with rage to its visor and swung the mask up. The face in the helm was wild with bloodlust, fangs out and digging into pallid skin. The warrior was as different to Mephiston as Calistarius was, but it was still undeniably him. This Mephiston screamed inhumanly. Black flames blazed around its eyes, obscuring most of his features but the wild mouth. This image zoomed in, making his face huge in the space between the pillars. Mephiston watched as it raised a bloody fist to its mouth. Clasped in armoured fingers was a small human arm. The Lord of Death turned away as the warrior bit down and fed upon the flesh. Mephiston was soaring over the battlefield, if such a slaughterhouse could be named so, casting bolts of red light from his unsheathed sword. What's more, as Mephiston has grown in power, he has attracted the attention of the Thousand Suns Legion.
I have discovered a threefold soul amongst the sons of your dead brother Sanguinius. In their fortress monastery, a warrior scholar whose links to the great ocean are stronger than anything I have ever heard of. He was reborn after death and remade, resurrected by an unknown power. And now he has survived a third birth, tortured into a new form by the priests of Mars. He has been given a unique triad soul. There are fragments of Sanguinius in each piece, echoes. There is a shadow in him, the same shadow that was in Sanguinius, but it has been made manifest. He has been born 3 times, and his third birth has made him uniquely potent.
So there we have it. In the latest Mephiston book, City of Light, we get to see his new heightened power level, and even compared to the sorcerers of the Thousand Suns, he is insanely strong. He even attracts the attention of Magnus the Red. As I finish this video, it occurs to me that this is a very long chain of events, starting with Rebirth Guilliman forming Imperium Secundus, through to Sanguinius falling to the Black Rage, the birth of the Sanguinor, and his potential future battle against Mephiston. It is pretty incredible how well connected the many storylines of 40k are. This video is essentially covering 7 different books from the setting. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please do like and subscribe, and if you feel like getting access to some extra content and supporting the channel, please do consider joining through channel memberships. We've almost hit 10 members, so thanks to everyone who is already supporting. I'll see you next time.